Welcome, it's Jennifer. I hope you're having a good week. Today I wanted to share a stacked die cutting technique where you get a really cool stair-step effect. Now I've done techniques like this in the past, but I've come up with an easier way to do it. Now my favorite thing about this technique is that you get multiple cards out of one run through. So it's like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 deal. I'm going to show you a bunch of variations. I did a bunch of examples today to hand out to folks in my community and to my friends, so I will show you those too. The nice thing about this technique is you can use any stamps you want. You just need a set of nesting dies. Okay, so I'm going to start with the heart examples that you see here. For all of these, I'm using some scraps that I had, and I cut them all down to 4 by 5 1/4, so slightly smaller than the note card that I'll be using. So I picked 4 shades of a pool color for this first example. I also have a stacking die set. This is the Hero Arts Nesting Heart set. I really like their nesting die sets because they have so many dies included in one set. They're all very close in size, and the price point is spectacular. I especially recommend their heart, circle, and rectangle nesting die sets. Okay, so I'm taking a few of the hearts, kind of the medium-sized ones, and I'm arranging them cutting edge down on a piece of magnetic paper. The reason I'm doing this on magnetic paper is it's holding them in place as I arrange them nicely to fit inside of each other. Again, the cutting edge is face down. Now I'm putting some micropore tape, you could use masking tape, on the back of the die so that they're held together in this position. And we're going to use this for our technique today. So now that this is ready, I'm going to start with the first piece of cardstock, the one I want foremost on my card, and that is the darkest color. That's what I chose to use. And I'm putting a light pencil line down the middle, just so I can be sure to line up my heart in the center. You don't have to do that if you feel like you can kind of eyeball it. So I'm placing this down towards the top center of my dark teal cardstock, and I'm going to run it through my die cut machine. This will result in the dark teal cardstock with a large heart window and a bunch of individual hearts of varying sizes that I can use on other cards, and I'll show you that in a bit. Now I need to cut in the next darkest teal piece a heart that's 1 step smaller. So what I'm going to do is remove one of the heart dies from the little taped piece that we have. I will take that darker piece that we just cut so I have kind of a spot where I can line up my dies. So I'm removing the largest die, and then I'm just going to line that up inside that dark piece. Then I will remove the dark piece once I've stuck this down, and then I will die cut through that next color of teal cardstock. So this will result in a piece of teal cardstock with a heart window that is 1 size down from the last one that we cut. And again, we'll get a bunch of individual hearts to use on other cards. Once you see me do this a few times, it'll start to make sense, but basically what we're doing is cutting each piece of cardstock with a heart that is 1 size smaller than the last one, so that when we layer them on top of each other, we have a stair-step effect going down into the heart. And we end up with all those little extra heart pieces for other cards. So there you can see this one stair-steps down a size. So now I'm going to repeat the process again with the next color of pool cardstock, and I will again remove one of the dies, the outside biggest die, and I will cut that. Again, I've just got that darker piece on the outside there just to help me center that heart up, and I will remove it before I die cut. Now you could do this with any shape stacking dies you may have, stars, hearts, circles, rectangles, anything you want. I'll show you rectangles and circles later in this video. So now we have our next piece in the stair-step effect. And again, I've got a pile of hearts building off to the side. Now I chose different shades of a pool color for this card, but you could do like a rainbow going down towards the center of the heart, or use whatever scraps that you may have. You could even do it with pattern paper. So now I'm down to the last heart. I'm cutting it from the lightest pool color cardstock. Again, using the last piece to line it up and make sure I have it in the center. So now I have all of my pieces and they stack down beautifully, and then check out all the extra pieces I have also, so I can make several cards out of these. I'm going to show you 2 cards in today's video. I saved the extra hearts for some cards Lila wants to make later. Let's start with the die cuts that I put on these cards. I kept them very simple. I needed some white cardstock covered with double-sided adhesive. So I'm taking an 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock and covering the entire piece with Stick-It double-sided adhesive. This is a very die-cut friendly adhesive, and I might as well cover a whole piece so I have some left over for later, even though I'm only using a small piece for today's project. Any of the extra adhesive back cardstock I keep in a little sleeve with other pieces so they're ready for future die cutting. The die that I'm using on my first card says Share Handmade Kindness. This is a very detailed die that Hero Arts has come out with recently, and part of the proceeds from this go to the Kind campaign to help end bullying, so it's a great cause. Now with a detailed die like this, I highly recommend running through the die cut machine twice. On that first one I didn't. But on this one, you'll see me go once through my die cut machine and back through again. I find that with a detailed die, you have a better chance of it cutting through entirely, all the way through the adhesive too, if you run it through twice. And that did the trick for this. So now I have 2 die cuts ready to go. Now this, I decided I wanted to add something special to it. So I wanted to put some silver sparkle embossing powder on it. So I'm going to press some Versamark ink right onto the die cut. Remember, there is adhesive on the back of this with some release paper on it. I'm going to dip this into some Wow Silver Sparkle Embossing Powder, and I will heat set that. Now, I'm actually going to put on a couple coats of this. So after I heat set and let the first coat cool, I'm going to go ahead and add more Versamark ink on top and more embossing powder and heat set it again. This gives a nice rounded look to that die cut, so it doesn't look like a flat piece of paper. While this cools, let's go ahead and glue our tiered heart together here. So they all stack down or step down nicely and perfectly because of the technique that I showed you earlier. So I'm simply gluing them together. The cool thing is from the side, you can see the variation of color. It looks really cool, and it's not that thick, so I'm not worried about mailing it. So after I have glued them all together, we have this perfect stacked or stair-stepped heart die cut window. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my standing tool just to kind of smooth the edges off, make sure they're lined up, and look how beautiful that is from the side. Now I'm just going to glue this on to the front of a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folding white note card. I'm not really sure why I switched to double-sided tape to adhere that, but it really doesn't matter as long as your adhesive is strong. Then I removed the release paper from the back of this die cut, and I'm placing it right over the window. Now with Stick-It double-sided adhesive that's on the back of this die cut, you need to press it firmly to get it to stick. So what I'm going to do is put a piece of paper over it and then rub my bone folder over it very generously. I really want to press this down to really get that to stick to our card, and that does the trick. I end up with that shimmery die cut with lots of dimension and shine to it, added on to this very simple graphic card. It really looks cool in real life to see that stair step down. So that's the card on the left. The card on the right uses some of the leftover hearts from the technique that we did. Wanted to show you how I did that along with those embossed hearts around it. So using 3 of the larger heart dies, not the ones we used earlier from the nesting set, but the ones that are larger, I just taped those together so that I would have the 3 connected, just like we connected them earlier on. Now what I'm going to do with this is impress this into my white note card. We're not actually going to cut it like we did earlier. So I have a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folding white note card, and I'm just going to add these large heart dies with the cutting edge down towards the top center of the card. Now I'm going to run this through my die cut machine how I would normally do an embossing folder. Now everybody's die cut machine is different. I'm using the Big Shot from Sizzix, and for that I open up my tabs to tab 1, and then I put down my cutting plate on top of that. Now to do impressions, I've done this many times in videos. In fact, I'll link to a video where I did the same technique with the same die set for some other cards. You need to use an embossing pad. That's that brown pad that you see there. It has a little give to it. I put my paper and my dies cut inside down onto it. And what happens is that pad prevents the dies from cutting through the paper, but instead just presses the dies into the paper, leaving this really cool embossed or impressed pattern on your note card. It's just a great way to add a little bit of interest to a plain white note card. So now I have all my hearts left over from earlier, and I'm going to glue those right into the center. Nothing fancy, I just glued them all down and they fit inside of each other perfectly. Now on this card, I used a new die from Hero Arts that says a bit of kindness to brighten your day. I did the same technique of covering it with this silver sparkle embossing powder. In this die, some of the proceeds from this also go to the Kind campaign. So there are the two examples. It's kind of a 2-for-1 deal with this technique, and I have some leftover hearts for Lila to use. That sparkle embossing powder on the die cut really makes a big difference in making these simple cards pop. I next wanted to show you a few other examples using this technique. I'm not going to show you the whole process. It's the same that I did for the hearts, but for this one I used the Hero Arts nesting rectangle die set. So again, I just lined up some of the rectangle dies so they are all perfectly spaced, and then I put tape on the back of them to hold them together. I then did the same technique that I showed you earlier, but this time I did a rainbow assortment of colors so that as each piece stair-stepped down, it was a different color in the rainbow. After I did all of the die cutting, I wanted to add some sentiments to the opening. I used this Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set. I've used this a few times in videos before, and I like how it has the sentiments that you can build up to say you are beautiful, you are valued, appreciated, needed, important, not alone. You can use these separately, or I put them all together to fill that opening on that card. So again, that used the rectangle nesting set from Hero Arts. I added some Lucy's Cards heart iridescent sequins onto this just to catch the light a little bit, but keep it very simple. You can see the rainbow from the side, which is really cool. With some of the leftover pieces, I created this piece. This sentiment is from that same Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set. Added sequins to this one too, and I did add the pink rectangle in the center with some foam tape so it stood up a little bit. Very simple cards, fun technique with lots of leftover pieces. Next, I wanted to show you how you could use this technique to create a shaker window or even float a sentiment across it. Once again, I have the fabulous Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set, and this also has part of the proceeds going to the Kind campaign. Now on a piece of heat-resistant acetate, I have put my anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping with Versamark ink a kindness sentiment, and then I'm adding white embossing powder. Now I let my heat gun get good and hot for about 30 seconds, and then quickly brought the heat to this to allow it to melt the embossing powder without warping my acetate. And now I can use that as a window for these stacked heart die pieces that I created. These heart pieces were created just like I showed you earlier in the video, but this time I'm sandwiching in that stamped acetate piece. The rest of the heart pieces go together just as I showed you before. Now I did decide to add some sequins in there. So before I put the last piece, the backing piece down, I'm going to throw a few little sequins in here. These are from Pretty Pink Posh. They're fun sequins because they don't actually have holes in the center. They just look like confetti. So I'm going to put a few of them in there, and then put the backing piece on this. And there we have a fun shaker card. You could skip the sequins if you want to and just have the floating sentiment, but I thought those few little sequins were fun inside of there. And then I just added that to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. Very simple, and I have some leftover pieces for later. If you wanted to step these cards up, you could add maybe a stamped background onto that large pink piece, or do maybe an embossing folder. Another idea is to ink some stencil over it, just for a tone-on-tone look. So this example, same technique that I showed you earlier, but on the top piece, I decided to do a little bit of inking with a new Hero Arts stencil. So I'm taking the stencil and I'm taping it onto the front of this heart piece, kind of centering it up so the pattern lines up nicely. And then I'm using an ink blending tool and some Tim Holtz Abandoned Coral Distress ink. Now with a dainty stencil like this, you want to be careful to not move parts of the stencil. So that's why you see my hand kind of holding it down while I ink it. And when I remove it, I have that subtle pattern, and I still have my stacked hearts for behind that. Now on this one, I decided to die cut that Share Handmade Kindness, but I cut off the Share Handmade, so I just have the word kindness, and then the Doesn't Go Unnoticed is from that Hero Arts You Are Loved stamp set. Now this kindness die cut here is covered with a clear sparkle embossing powder, just to give it a little bit of interest, but you can't really see it in the video. Next, I wanted to show you a bunch of cards that I made with all of those leftover hearts. This one, I impressed the large heart kind of off to the top left of my white note card and added some of the pink and coral hearts to the center. And then I added a gold glitter paper die cut that I created with it a bit of kindness die from Hero Arts. Very simple, and I like that it's kind of off to the side for something different. On this one, I used some more of the leftover hearts, and I embossed the larger hearts around it on the white note card. And over this, I stamped "You Make This World Beautiful" with black ink. If it doesn't stamp entirely on all of that texture, you can fill in the empty areas with a thin black pen and nobody will ever know. I did add a little wink of Stella to that for a bit of shine. This one might be my favorite. It says "You Are Something Magical," stamped with black ink, and I traced that with my shimmer wink of Stella pen and added some gems from Lucy Cards. She's recently come out with these rainbow gems that are fantastic. It's a tiny little pack, but it has pretty much every color you need, and they're perfect to add onto the front of your card or put in a shaker card. Now, before we go, I decided to do some other random cards, completely random, using some of the other newer Hero Arts stamp sets. This is their new koala layering stamp set. I layered this with Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, Hero Arts Soft Granite ink, and Hero Arts Charcoal ink, and you get this realistic koala. I just thought that sentiment was so much fun. I die cut him and then added him onto a stacked die cut background that I created with the Hero Arts nesting circle dies. I did variations of green going from darkest to lightest, and on that darkest top layer, I stamped a new Hero Arts background with a dark green ink just for a little bit of interest. Now, I couldn't get away without using the new Hero Arts Sea Turtle layering stamp set. This guy is so cute, and no matter what shades of green you use to stamp the layering images to create these sea turtles, they turn out great. They are just so forgiving. And I'll try to use them in a future video so you can see the actual stamping, but I couldn't make this video any longer than it already is. But in the background of this, I used that stacked die cutting technique, and I used some shimmer paper for it, so it has a little interest but doesn't distract from that sea turtle. So I used circle stacking dies from Hero Arts, and this shimmer paper is Nina cardstock. They have a variety pack of shimmer cardstock. It's got some silvers and light golds in it. I'll link to what I used, but it was perfect for the background. So this card here uses the leftover circles from that technique, so I got 2 cards from it. So that just shows that you can use this technique for a variety of styles. I hope you give this technique a try. So I link the supplies that I use below in my YouTube description. But please go to my blog. I'll have much more information there for you. In the middle are 2 videos that have similar techniques that might be worth checking out. Thanks for stopping by and have a wonderful day.